fizz. I can smell the hop aroma from over there.
Hi, I'm Rob King. Welcome to the Homebrew Master Plan, and this is our lessons learned for the very first of our brews, the Double IPA. This is the bottled version, and the bottled version turned out wonderfully. Nicely carbonated, good aroma, and it's still got that lovely taste. Do check out the original video for the grain to glass recipe, or check out some of our outtakes for an alternative version of the evaluation. Now, this brew was based on the Flora Brews recipe, so also I'll provide that info in the description. Now, Flora Brews did a larger version, and this is a scaled down version of that same recipe. Now, before I begin, I just want to talk through a few of the vital statistics as we went through this brew. Starting with the pre-boil gravity, that was 1.055 versus a target of 1.058, and we'll talk about that a little later on. I think that was a brewfather settings issue, and that certainly then sort of continued through as we got to the final gravity, where we were most off target with a 1.072 versus a target of 1.080. All this added up to, in the end, our ABV was 7.9% rather than 8.8%. When it comes to homebrewing, I'm sure everyone's interested in how much does it cost. Now, equipment aside, the cost of the actual ingredients came in at only £21.28. This breaks down then per pint at roughly £2.24 per pint, or if you prefer the 500ml bottles, then it's £1.94. The 440ml cans, that would be £1.70, and the cost of a 330ml bottle would be £1.28. Something comparable, say a Brewdog Hazy Jane, that would come in at £3.65 currently. So roughly the cost of the homebrew is about half of the cost of a production beer. On then to our lessons learned, and my first two lessons were the two mistakes that I made during the brew. The first one is I didn't add the water chemicals in time. Now, fortunately, I did notice this quite quickly, and I added them fairly early in the mash. That is where they are going to have quite an impact, so hopefully I caught that in time. The second was I was also a little light on water, and I realised this too, that I hadn't added the full quantity. Now, this was easy to add the extra quantity in between the mash and the boil. I didn't want to add it in during the mash because effectively then it would have changed the temperature of the mash, but instead I just simply added it in as the water was heating up for the boil. Now, lesson learned, I would have perhaps been better adding this in as a sparge and heating the water up to sparge temperature, and then using that just simply to sparge the grains. It would have given me a few extra gravity points potentially, and that might have helped. However, I thought of that afterwards. If you did happen to find yourself down a few litres, then adding it in between the mash and the boil is the right place to do it. But now I would add it in as a sparge, potentially to give myself a gravity point or two extra. The third lesson then I alluded to earlier in terms of brewfather settings, and the fact that I missed that pre-boil gravity and original gravity number. Now, the brew house efficiency that I used was 70%, and it actually recalculated based on my results closer to 63%. So I am going to down that percentage in the future. I have sparged my brew in the bags previously, and this was a pure brew in the bag. You don't tend to sparge when you do a brew in the bag, so hence I think I lost a little bit of efficiency there. The fourth lesson learned then is the whirlpool. This was a great little addition, and there is a video in terms of how I did a DIY kit to make one of my own. Now this particularly helps during cooling because it does bring the temperature down much more quickly. Unfortunately, there is also a little bit of a downside, and I need to perhaps introduce a hop filter or something similar around the inlet valve that really is sucking out the wort to pump it around and actually create the whirlpool effect. Because if that runs dry, it can damage the magnetic motor that is driving the pump. And I did find those hop bags were clogging it up and stopping the wort from flowing. Lesson number 5 is that Kveik yeast. Now Kveik yeast has many advantages. One, the brew time was massively compressed, so that was super fast. Also, the temperature range, we can pitch at 30 degrees, you can just mostly leave it indoors, really does make this an easy brew to do, and that's all down to the Kveik yeast. I'm actually brewing another beer at the moment just using a normal yeast, and I'd forgotten just how quick the Kveik is. It's like, is it there yet? Is it there yet? Is it there yet? As far as my current brew is concerned, but that is more normal than the Kveik. But yeah, what a fantastic yeast that is. Now, lesson number 6, and you know, to quote the Italian job here, I couldn't get the bloody lid off. I'm not sure exactly what was going on there, but oh my goodness, that was a struggle to try and get that lid off, and it shook everything up inside, not what I wanted to do. Now, was that just because I bought a cheap wide mouth fermenter? Is it normal, or did I do something wrong? I'd love to get your point of view to sort of help me out on that one, but clearly it was all down to brute force and ignorance to get that lid off. Finally, just want to talk a little bit about the volume. 8 litres of volume into the fermenter resulted in only 5.5 litres of actual beer out the other side. Yeah, that wasn't quite what I was hoping for. I was certainly very optimistic in my bottling to sort of get a bit more out than I did. However, it may have been short, but it was perfectly formed. So we're on to the next one, and coming up for February is the Valentine's Day chocolate mead. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. In the meantime, happy homebrewing, do like and subscribe, and thank you very much. Cheers.